Next on Investigative Report. There has been a phenomenal push to end the patriarchy. A move to destroy the traditional family unit and in its place uplift single motherhood and all that comes with it. In this edition of Investigative Report, we not only take you through statistical data that shows the damage of fatherless homes and communities, we reveal where this experiment has been applied before in history and failed. Antiquity has shown us, erase a competent father from the family unit and you immediately inherit higher rates of incarceration, greater instances of neighborhood blight, above average crime rates coupled with teen drug use and pregnancy. In its place, big government always promises a big fix. Financial assistance to repair the damage done to lineage in the name of progress. The Men's Channel presents Death of a Family. Canaries in the Coal Mine. So goes the community, so goes the world. In past mining operations, it was a prudent idea for the lead man to carry a canary with him in his cage in order to signal impending doom. The use of canaries in coal mines to detect carbon monoxide and other toxic gases before they hurt humans was a norm long before carbon monoxide detectors were in existence. Now, if the bird became ill or died, that would give miners a warning to evacuate their mine immediately before they would die of the fumes. They aren't using canaries anymore. Now, in today's society, there is one subset group of people we will be talking about that have been the canary in the mine of civilization for the last 60 plus years. This group of people have already been sacrificed in order to serve a greater matriarchal leadership goal long before this current push, and it has failed them miserably with a capital M. In this edition of Investigative Report, we hope to show you how the push to promote a matriarchal society at the expense of common sense serves no one, and especially not the members of that matriarchal group. Now, in doing this as a society, we are going nowhere good. Listen to me. We are going nowhere good in doing this. And it amazes me that the promoters of this supposedly new idea forget that it is an old idea that has seen its day. Its time has come and gone. One does not have to look as far back as the Roman Empire to know that the matronization of society helped to seal its doom back then. No, sir. We don't have to go back that far. We need to go no further than 1964. No further than the time of the 60s and the free love era. The time of the presidency of Lyndon Baines Johnson and his war on poverty. Now, Johnson set out after Kennedy's assassination before a joint session of Congress and announced an unconditional war on poverty in America. Johnson thought it was something that he could win. Now, in that war on poverty, the husbands and fathers of the black community would be sacrificed on the altar in order to give black women assistance in the form of cash, housing, and food, and anything else they might need. Now, I'd like to quote for you now Derek Green's opinion. Derek is a spokesman for Project 21 who had this to say, and I quote him: "The disastrous effects of the government's management of anti-poverty initiatives are recognizable across racial lines. But the destruction is particularly evident in the black community," he says. Now I wonder why. He says, "It effectively subsidized the disillusionment of the black family by rendering the black male's role as a husband and a father irrelevant, invisible, and more specifically, disposable." And now this thing is going to be spread out the entire United States of all races of men. The results have been several generations of black children born into broken homes and broken communities experiencing social, moral, and economic chaos. It fosters an inescapable dependency that primarily and oftentimes solely relies on government to sustain livelihoods. The government to sustain livelihoods. No longer do you have to sustain your own. He goes on to say federal programs directly resulted from the war on poverty include Medicare, Medicaid, Head Start, food stamps, and enhanced Social Security benefits. Now, at the time, President Johnson boasted that the richest nation, being the United States, on earth, can afford to win this war on poverty. In 1988, President Ronald Reagan noted in his 1988 State of the Union address that we waged a war on poverty and poverty won. President George H.W. Bush, in his own 1992 State of the Union address, pointed out, welfare was never meant to be a lifestyle. It was never meant to be a habit. It was never supposed to be passed on from one generation to the next generation like a legacy or an inheritance. But that has been a problem. We're in a vicious cycle of government dependency. Now, Bush's comments echoed a statement by President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who long before the war on poverty even began warned government assistance could be like a narcotic. He was saying you could be addicted to it. Now, it would seem that the black race has served a great reminder of the canaries in the mine of what not to do in making a community a matriarchal leader. Now, I'm going to discuss a lot of this in this program, and by the time you finish, if you stick with me, you'll understand. But just me telling you this means nothing if I don't back it up with facts and logic for the skeptical, for I'm sure there's many out there. Christopher Ops from Project 21, the National Black Leadership Network, states, the war on poverty has arguably destroyed the black nuclear family, which it has. Listen to these facts. Roughly 75% of black children were born to a married two-parent family when the war began in 1964. Unfortunately, by 2008, the percentage of black babies born out of wedlock numbered over 72%, which is the exact opposite, ladies and gentlemen, of what it started out to be. In slavery, 85% of black families were married. The current day, almost 80% single. Today, the rate of unwed mothers in the black community is more than twice as high as among whites, and almost 3 times higher than before big government's grand intervention. And that in itself makes no sense. And all this comes at a steep financial cost. The U.S. federal government has spent an estimated $15 trillion to end poverty. That same government reportedly spent $20,610 on every poor individual, $61,830 per poor family in 2012 alone. In the 1950s, after at least 70 years of rough parity, African American marriages rates began to fall behind white races. In 1950, the percentage of white and African American women were currently married were roughly the same. Listen, roughly the same. 67% and 64% respectively. But watch what happens. Always watch what happens. By 1998, the percentage of currently married white women had dropped by 13% to 58%. But the drop among African American women was 44% to 36%. More than 3 times larger. The declines for males were parallel. 12% for white men, 36% for African American men. But look at this. But the quandary in teaching women to move to a more matriarchal-led home opened the floodgates to more feminist leaders who lied to their followers. And they're still lying today.
You're watching MNN, the men's channel.
I checked thoroughly, and to the last woman, every leader of these pro-female groups who decry "you don't need a man" mantra were married to a man, and for a long time. Most of these same women who professed that a woman's right to choose was sacred and had children, she had children herself instead of an abortion. And most of them had grandchildren. And some of those women of the leadership had great-grandchildren. You want to see some more lies? Most of the women also said that religion was a barrier to women and something that was made up by men in order to control women. These same women who said that went to church on a regular basis and took their families with them. Now, most of the matriarchal leaders who insisted that they were making public schools better for other women's children had their own children in private schools to the last woman and would not dream of sending them to a public one, and so on. The hypocrisy just kept on going. Now, if you doubt this information, Google the background, income, and spouse of every feminist leader to include the Speaker of the House, to female leaders of even the group Black Lives Matter movement, or anyone who professes down with the matriarchy. I'm sorry, we can't say that now, right? anybody who says down with the patriarchy. But the most glaring hypocritical example, do as we say and not what we do, is that while they keep the average woman broke, following their leadership, they are the wealthiest people in the United States of America and the wealthiest women in the world. That's the leadership of the pro-matriarchy. They are so wealthy that they find the time to criticize people that they call wealthy to pretend to identify with the average man or woman. In actuality, their net worth was higher than the most wealthy people they profess to condemn. And finally, that they vacation and ate in some of the most exclusive spots on the planet, to include people like the former daytime talk show queen, and you know who I'm talking about, who has, at the taping of this show, has been with her man for over 35 years straight. The same woman who fought males on TV for years and said, we don't need men. Now, during her reign on television, she spent 25 years bad-mouthing men to uplift women, which was odd for a woman who had a man every year of that 25-year season. Now, the biggest lie these women profess in decrying smash the patriarchy is that they are married to the patriarchy they profess to hate. Now, if I was a woman, that would be enough right there for me to leave that group. But today it would seem that these women are denying most other women and their children the one thing they enjoy and fantasize about most for themselves. That's men, family, and the love of life itself. Because absent the father that it took to create the child, not only leaves a void in the children's life, but in the community as a whole. You take the father out of the community, a competent father, not just a father who can make a child, you kill the community. Now, if you remember all of the things I told you that negatively impact a fatherless community, well, scientists would tell you that any study of a phenomenon or experiment where a change resulted, so we started here and we ended up here. We started from A, we got to Z. Over time, directly correlates with something being either introduced to the environment or taken away from that particular environment. Now, if we look back at 50 years of push to change the family, we see such a negative impact on children that we can say there is a correlation to what has changed in that community of human beings. What would that be? But with the way we are being sold this new idea as matriarchal society being the panacea of everything, once this comes about, we'll be winning. We could ever hope for, we are being lied to. Today you have seen some men that write me and feel that women are using reverse sexism against them. This is reverse sexism, brother. That's what they tell me. But this is not true. Now you have other men who write me and they feel that women's treatment of men under reverse sexism is some form of payback of past male indiscretions. They think it's something we deserve. That's wrong too. And I'll tell you why. Now first I would have to say that this is a bad idea because what goes around comes around, which will lead young men in the future to despise women of their day for what women do now. So it would be a payback of sorts. Secondly, we are not facing a payback or reverse sexism. What we are looking at from women at this particular time in history is a modern day form of discrimination with makeup on. That's right, discrimination. The entire attitude that the modern day matriarchs place towards men is no different than past cultural or racial hatred groups placed upon the people they didn't particularly like. And I can go down an entire list of people that were hate groups. Now, let's take for example, in this video, like when the FCC freely allowed Miss Sharon Osbourne of The Talk to joke freely about a woman who cut off her own husband's penis because he wanted a divorce and put it down a garbage disposal and turned it on. Now, where a man would say something like that, there would be outcry. But there was no outcry when she said it. When Miss Osbourne did her half-hearted joking apology, there was no outcry. Men are seen as fodder to every punchline on daytime talk shows and television. But when Miss Osbourne had a difference of opinion with her own gender, two different instances on the show, there became a problem, if you might have heard of that this year. Now, her employees at the talk show said in a statement that after an internal review conducted during the show's unplanned hiatus, the network had decided that Osbourne's behavior towards her co-host during the Martian episode did not align with our values for a respectful workplace. Now, what kind of values would be laughing at a man who got his penis cut off and then thrown down a garbage disposal? What values do you have after that? So now, on that now infamous March 10 show, the daytime series hosting panel discussed whether British TV personality Piers Morgan's comments about Meghan Markle were racist or not. And we'll show you these two different films in just a moment. Now, Osborne was very vocal, both in her defense of Morgan and in her apparent worry that she would be considered racist for offering her support of Morgan. Now, at several points in the heated conversation, Mrs. Osborne spoke over Cheryl Underwood, so she kept talking over her, which led to social media posts criticizing Osborne's behavior. You see, it was okay, like I said before, to talk about a man's penis being cut off, but not if a woman criticizes another woman. Now, Ms. Osborne was fired for the perceived harm she did to her audience. She was not fired in the past for the actual harm and joking about a man who had his genitalia mutilated. Apparently, the show pretended to be more worried with racism than penis mutilation. I guess Ms. Osborne would have been fired if the man's penis in question had been black. That would be called racism. But the racist way is the way men are treated today by women. Not for their race, but just because they're men. So let's roll that clip of the two scenes for comparison.
Hello and welcome to The Talk. Welcome to The Talk. Last Thursday on the show, we talked about Catherine Q. Becker, the woman making headlines for allegedly cutting off her husband's penis. It was a free-flowing conversation, and we all weighed in.
Well, no, I would like to say something that I do not condone genital mutilation.
You okay, Sharon?
Okay.
Look, you want me to start?
Yeah.
Okay. What I know about Sharon and the ladies at the table is that we really mean no harm when we say things. Sharon is the person who says things, we all laugh, she means no harm by it. So I know that about every one of you. There's no ill intent, but it's not easy doing a live show 5 days a week, and we wish we can say the right thing all the time, but we can't. It's hard. We can't look good all the time. We can't say the right thing. We can't be funny all the time. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have looked at you when I said that. but
Maybe you wanted my comfort because you're not funny all the time.
Yes, I did. Thank you. Thank you for picking me up, sister.
Oh no, thank you,
you're
Mia.
welcome.
It's just I do not condone genital mutilation, and I didn't mean any harm by laughing about it. And I'm sorry that I offended people because that's not my intention or the intention of this show. It's not what we're about.
Now let's fast forward on the very same show 9 years later.
Well,
what?
We'll be right
Well,
back.
what?
We have more topics, so don't go away.
And I think we should stop this. I will ask you again, Cheryl.
Yes.
I've been asking you during the break. I'm asking you again. And don't try and cry, because if anyone should be crying, it should be me. This is the situation.
Yes.
You tell me where you have heard him say, educate me. Tell me when you have heard him say racist things. Educate me. Tell me.
It is not the exact words of racism. It's the implication and the reaction to it. To not want to address that because she is a black woman and to try to dismiss it or to make it seem less than what it is. That's what makes it racist. But right now, I'm talking to a woman who I believe is my friend, and I don't want anybody here to watch this and say that we're attacking you for being racist. And for that, if I articulated,
I think it's
anything,
too late. I think that seed's already sown.
But that is why I'm saying for me. I'm saying for me. For me. I thought I was asking a question about the perception for other people. That's why I prefaced it with, I've never heard you utter anything racist, but I have felt that Pierce was racist in his stance against Meghan Markle. And the last time he was on this show, I said as much.
The biggest horror of it all is that when government invites itself in to help repress men for the advancement of those matriarchal goals. You see, in federalizing hatred, we end up institutionalized racism towards all men instead of a color of a man. In essence, we return to a past where the government backed hatred groups, one group by another. And we remember this in the past for over a couple hundred years. Now, just take a look at some of the laws women push today to control the freedoms of men's movement that they enjoy for themselves. You had recently in the UK, a female member of the Parliament, Baroness Jenny Jones, a Green Party member of the House of Lords, wanted to push a bill that would provide a 6 p.m. curfew for men so women would feel safe to walk the streets at night. Are you kidding? This idea alone is equivalent, as I told you before, to old racist laws such as curfews were common in the U.S. during the time of the Jim Crow. Now, when white communities created so-called sundown towns that banned black Americans from residing in or even entering their neighborhood in the evening. You see the parallel? So like I say today, it's not a gender reverse sexism. It is a racism towards all men of all colors. And you have thousands of these laws and ordinances proposed all across 50 states that will place rules on men's backs, but not apply them to women's. Like I said, there is not reverse sexism. This is racism minus the race, just based upon gender. Now, in the About section beneath this video, I will leave you a link to a book I wrote on this subject. But I must confess, personally, that I would not want to live in a matriarchal run community that hated me for being a man for what I'd seen growing up in the ghetto myself. I did grow up in a black community in the ghetto. You have violence, despair, and pain for sure. But the solution to that community is not to expand that community, but to break up this sort of life. The solution is an understanding what leads to the negativity and violence within that community. You see, a lot of people, when they try to address it on TV, they don't even know what they're talking about because they never lived from the inside. Knowing and understanding this is the same reason you wouldn't want the idea expanded nationwide. No, sirree. Female-dominated communities like the ghettos, mother-led homes, are a horrible place to live, just like prisons are a horrible place to live for men. Now, I'll give you a comparison. I'll compare and contrast for you now the ghetto versus an all-male prison population, for they are the same. Both have violence, drug use, and a painful past, but they are created only after the predominant gender that rules is the same. So in a ghetto, it's all women that rule. In a prison, it's all men that rule. You see, when I use this to teach, I would, in the past, I would explain to people that if you have two genders in a home, to raise a child, it is better than one gender, and especially just the mother. In life, mothers, as nice as they may be, usually represent the mercy in a relationship to children. They represent the mercy. Now, any child raised in a home where he learns justice from dad and mercy from mom ends up being a more well-rounded human being than one who only had the one strength of mercy. But separate those two strengths of justice and mercy, and you may end up with one of the most demonic young people that ever graced the planet. Now, here's the comparison to the male prisons and the matriarchal run ghettos. So if you're afraid of a matriarchal society and you want an example, just look no further than towards the ghetto. Now, if you have too much mercy or too much justice in one place, you will always have the makings for violence. This makes neither gender perfect by itself, but better together if you want to raise a child intact. This is also why the government system to remove the father from the relationship in exchange for money, food, or housing became such a failed system. And why, if you have an entire matriarchal society that only cares for itself, as opposed to a male society who has to care for others, it's going to fail. A ghetto becomes inherently angry because it is parented by thousands of matriarchal run homes where the mother has mercy, but not the respect of justice or the father on her side. Now, as a result, the children run over her first, and then the surrounding community, and then the surrounding country.
You're watching MNN, the men's channel.
The United States got out of the ghetto building industry in the early 80s, once police and federal agencies identified that most major crimes in cities took place within a 5-mile radius of every ghetto. Now, after those crimes were committed, those young men and young ladies who committed them ran back to the mercy of their mother's side for protection from the police. Now, I wonder how easily would they have run back to the justice their father's arms after breaking that same law. Now, I didn't say just any man. I said a competent father. I mentioned that earlier in the video. Anybody can make a baby, male or female. But can he be a real parent? Then in all male prisons, you have an inverse of the same thing. Too much justice, meaning everyone in there is a male and they have nothing but justice attitude towards one another, or the need to dominate each other, becomes demonic. With only justice and no mercy for one another breeds distrust and violence similar to the ghetto, the same scenario. Now, other self-hate from matriarchal-led communities comes from a mother who participates in what I refer to as a three-way hate. Remember this, a three-way hate. Not just a one-way, two-way, a three-way hate. A three-way hatred is when a mother hates herself, hates the man she had the child by, and finally hates the child itself. That is what I refer to as a three-way hate. In this scenario, the child grows up with hatred even as if he has no father. Now, knowing how both genders operate together and how they do apart, I could never promote a matriarchal agenda, for it is a hate-filled agenda.
You're watching MNN, the men's channel.
The purveyors of a matriarchal hatred insist down with the patriarchy, but up with the matriarchy. Now, this to me insists that we exchange one villain for another. So if women say men are the villain, you should let us be in charge. We're even worse. They use phrases like women are perfect to insist that men are flawed. Women are smarter to insist that men are stupid. Women are nicer to insist that men are meaner. Women are safer to insist that men are dangerous. Now, as I said before, you could get these same phrases throughout the Deep South during the segregation, or from Nazis in the Nazi Germany against Jews, or any other group you care to oppress on the planet. You always have we are better and they are worse. So why would I want to promote a matriarchy? Now, what the matriarchy doesn't advertise as readily as they do their prowess is that their homes are award winners when it comes to their children getting higher rates of incarceration, higher rates of pregnancy, disease, alcoholism, drug addiction, mental issues, school dropouts, homelessness and runaway, poverty, latchkey kids, hungry and starving kids, premature death before adulthood, abused children, molested at a higher rate, higher rates of suicide, and general all-around bad nutrition. Now, those things will never be boasted on one of the daytime talk shows that promote a coming matriarchy. Now, some people ask, why is it easier for society to love women today and yet hate men so vehemently? That's easy. It's simple. Most everyone has a mom, but everyone does not have a father, which makes it easier to hate the gender that is not there, but lacks understanding as to why your mother did not either want him there or chose to mate with a man first and then throw him out. So people grow up without a dad, so it's easier to love them all, for everybody. It places all the onus on the parent who is not there as opposed to the parent who is there the whole time and who placed you in the predicament in the first place. Now, in closing, the matriarchy by its definition seeks to leave males behind, which has shown in teaching young girls to move forward in life while letting young boys flounder and languish and do nothing. Now, this is the evident in the black community's pre-war poverty versus post-war poverty statistics. And they are amazing. But you don't need any statistics if you were born in the black community to know that more black men graduated high school and became professionals in 1964 than you did in the last graduation season in this country. And that was during maximum repression and segregation. But we allowed it. Yes, the women that have drunk from the leave the men behind, smash the patriarchy Kool-Aid, hate men, but oddly enough, still desire them and have sex with them. But I guess this is no different than a racist person did in the Old South or Nazi soldiers did to a Jewish woman that he despised. It's always the enemy does have sex with the enemy. It's amazing. Now, in promoting a matriarchal society, understand that you will not have a lineage to speak of. You You won't have generations that will be connected. They'll be dispersed throughout wherever you're going. Male-run generations that fought to hold family together is where we got lineage from. Female-run homes similar to the ghetto is where each kid, once they reach maturity, not only flees the community, I want to get out of there, but the state that they live in. And you won't have any family lineage or connectivity from that, from people running. No, you won't have it. Typically, children raised in poverty spend the remaining portion of their adult life fleeing that poverty, as well as the people that birthed them into that poverty. It's amazing, but it's true. For the Men's Channel, this is Charles Rivers. Thank you for watching.